The world of Formula One racing was thrown into disarray today, changed immeasurably, or at least the ownership of it was. Mercedes-Benz is teaming up with an investment company to buy control of Formula One champion Brawn GP. As Mercedes picks up Brawn, it's about to drop McLaren. Well, joining me now from Atlanta, our CNN Centre with all the facts and figures, is Patrick Snell. Big day for F1.
Oh, Becky, you know, if you thought the Formula One off-season was going to be quiet, then I strongly recommend you think again. I say that because, as you say, just this Monday we've learned that the German car giant Mercedes buying up the Brawn F1 team in a move that will likely see a potentially mouth-watering combination. Jenson Button joining McLaren as Lewis Hamilton's teammate. Very, very potentially exciting. Excuse me, bit of a throg in the throat. Mercedes will buy up 75% of Brawn in partnership with an Abu Dhabi investment company, but will continue as McLaren's engine partner. This through, we understand, until 2015. Now, Brawn, who won both world titles in their debut season in 2009, will be rebranded as Mercedes Grand Prix. That's going to be the new branding, the new team. Now, McLaren chairman, reaction from McLaren coming in. Ron Dennis calling it just a win-win situation, both for McLaren and Daimler AG, which has given up around 40% stake in McLaren. Ross Brawn saying as well that sign of the times, really accepting the buyout offer for his team will, to use his words, secure its future. And I think that's very important indeed when you assess all of this. What about the new outfit then? It's going to be fronted by Mercedes, and it's expected to tip Nico Rosberg as their #1 driver, a move that will certainly be popular in Mercedes' home country of Germany, especially if Rosberg is that man teamed with his compatriot Nick Heidfeld as well. Where does that leave that man Button? Well, the newly crowned drivers' champ, who last week we reported he was visiting McLaren's team HQ, is widely expected to sign for the British-based racing team, and that is going to be a juicy All-England partnership with the 08 world champ, his compatriot, the other young Brit, Lewis Hamilton, as well. So really exciting stuff, plenty to talk about. Never a dull moment, is it, Becky, when it comes to Formula One?
Oh, I can't believe it. This is probably the best year I can remember in years. Patrick Snell with the story for you. Formula One racing, of course, has always attracted those deep pockets. Joining me now to talk about the sport and today's purchase is motorsport business expert Christian Sylt. What do you make of today's developments, Christian, and what sort of impact will these developments have on the sport, do you think?
Well, I think that it's going to take some time for the impact of this to filter through, really. F1 has had a very hard year with, obviously, Honda pulling out at the end of last year, and then earlier in the year, Toyota, very recently, Toyota leaving, and then earlier in the year, there's been all sorts of disputes with the teams and the governing body. So I think, realistically speaking, F1 needs stability in the long term, and it needs a lot more good news stories like this one for it to have a real impact.
Without talking about the future of F1 as a whole, because there's been a whole load of sort of machinations at the top of the sport, let's assume that it's going to be around for some time. Effectively, we are talking here today as creating an environment where Mercedes is at the top, the likes of Ferrari and the rest sort of slightly in second position as far as the pole is concerned, and Brawn retaining their star driver, Jenson Button. Now, how quickly will the effects of today's news filter through into positions and wins so far as F1 is concerned?
Well, yes, I mean, a lot of this does depend on where the current world champion Jenson Button goes. There is the theory that he will be moved over to Mercedes with Lewis Hamilton, as you mentioned earlier, and that would obviously create a very strong pairing for next year, two British world champions. However, personally, I would have thought that with the investment from Mercedes and the Abu Dhabi Wealth Fund going into Brawn, I would have thought that that would give Brawn the money it needs to retain Button, who's currently in salary negotiations with them. So, realistically speaking, I think Button is key to all of this. And from where I'm looking, Brawn now has the money to keep him. And that's the real key, really, is money for Brawn, because after Honda left at the end of last year, it's lacked money.
Christian Sylt, we're going to have to leave there because we're going to have to take a very short break. But one wishes one was in Jenson Button's position, of course, negotiation-wise. We thank you for that. Our expert